Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of the hour. India and the European Union finalise a free trade agreement after 2 decades of talks. EU chief Ursula von der Leyen says the deal creates a 2 billion person market. Russian attacks across Ukraine kill 4 people and wound nearly 24, officials have said. President Zelensky says the strikes undermine peace efforts and calls for more pressure on Moscow. Hamas seeks to keep its police and civil servants in a new Gaza administration, sources say. Israel rejects any role for Hamas as ceasefire terms tie withdrawals to disarmament. Top federal immigration leaders begin leaving Minneapolis after a second US citizen is fatally shot by officers. The White House turns to border czar Tom Homan to take control as tensions remain high. North Korea launches 2 ballistic missiles towards the Sea of Japan, according to Japan and South Korea. The projectiles splashed down outside Japan's ease in Pyongyang's second test this month. China says it is ready to deepen cooperation with Britain as Prime Minister Keir Starmer visits this week. Starmer is set to meet President Xi Jinping and other senior Chinese leaders. Denmark and Greenland announce talks with Germany and France after President Trump renews pressure over Greenland. The visits aim to shore up European support amid strained transatlantic ties. US officials say ICE will help support security at the Milan Cortina Winter Olympics. The move sparks controversy, with Milan's mayor saying ICE is not welcome. Those are the top headlines for the hour, but first we turn to South Asia and at the 16th India-EU summit, along with the free trade agreement which was signed, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced a major expansion of defence and security cooperation with the EU. The new security and defence partnership focuses on joint production, co-development and technology sharing between India and European defence firms. Modi emphasised that the partnership will strengthen maritime security, cybersecurity and counter-terrorism efforts, while supporting India's Make in India initiative and enhancing the EU's supply chain resilience. He called the summit a historic turning point, noting the partnership could act as a stabilising factor in the international system amid global uncertainty. Alongside defence collaboration, India and the EU concluded negotiations on a long-awaited free trade agreement, which is expected to boost mutual investment and global supply chains. The pact, pending formal approval, could take effect in 2027. The initiative reflects a deepening strategic alignment between India and the European Union, signalling stronger defence, technology and economic ties for the coming decade. Joining us now to discuss this in further detail is Major General A.K. Sawach, a geostrategic expert joining us live from the Indian capital, New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General Sawach, for joining us here on NewsX World. Let's get straight into this. Of course, a hugely significant development as far as the free trade agreement goes. However, this defence pact is something special too. Why is this India-EU defence partnership being described as a historic turning point?
You see, as far as the complete agreement is a historic, it is a mother of all the agreement as so far. The reason is simple as that the way a churning effect is taking place in world, you can say the trade has become very unpredictable, the supply chains have been disturbed, and especially the way United States is behaving. So therefore, this free trade agreement will be game changing. There are 5 reasons for this. One is that basically this free trade agreement will boost the trade on the both sides. They will be a benefit to both Europe as well as India. In the sense, the manufacturing will increase, servicing factor will increase. This will affect 2 billion consumer on the either side, and it will also impact the 25% of the GDP of the world. And now India has seen it that there are, as far as India European Union trade is concerned, it is about $137 billion, and India is exporting about 75 to $77 billion, whereas the Europe is exporting about $60 billion. Now the products which were coming from Europe, they were having a heavy traffic like tariff like the luxury cars of BEMs or Volkswagen, Mercedes and all. So that will be
Okay.
reduced from 110 to 10%. Now, having said so, where is the important thing which is coming? The important thing is security and defense partnership which we are going to have between us and the European Union.
Yeah.
It will impact.
Yeah,
Yep.
and let's focus on that defence pact that's been signed. What kind of platforms or systems are most likely to be co-developed? Naval assets, drones, cyber tools, or something else?
Four things are there. One is cyber security, counter terrorism, maritime security, and also the joint manufacturing and joint production. First of all, joint production and manufacturing, transfer of technology in case if item is to be bought by India from European Union. We are buying a Rafale from France about 140. Now the point which is coming is that it should be transfer of technology and made in India. So this will be give a boost to Indian manufacturing. Second thing, in maritime security is very, very important. After Donald Trump has come in 2.0, the Quad has taken a backseat, and there is a requirement of a global order to be followed there in Indo-Pacific, and for that there is a requirement of this security and defense package which has been signed, and this is not only with India they have signed, they have earlier signed with South Korea and Japan. Now this has become very important for maritime security, rule-based international order, and also protection of the navigational routes. Now that is very important which is coming. And the third thing, counter terrorism. The terrorism is increasing, supply chains are being affected badly by the piracy. That is also very important. So overall, the resilience has to come as far as in your supply chains, and they need to shift from China and US,
Okay.
because over dependence on them is a security risk. So therefore, the point which is coming in, as far as the security and defense partnership is concerned, it is a game changer. It is something what akin to what European Union has signed with South Korea and also with Japan. But what additional thing which it gives is counter-terrorism, maritime security, because the Indian Navy is very strong in the Indian Ocean. So I suppose it will go in wrong way, and also joint protection, joint manufacturing, that will be there. There will be a transfer of technology. Indian export have already increased tremendously in last about 5 to 6 years. It is now 25,000 crore,
Okay.
and we intend to increase it in another 3 to 4 years by 50,000 crore. So how it will happen is that joint protection.
Okay.
Joint protection between us and European Union will make a difference.
Okay, Major General Sawatch, do stay with us as we move from South Asia to the West. And Hamas is seeking to incorporate its 10,000 police officers into a new US-backed Palestinian administration for Gaza. According to experts, the demand is likely to be opposed by Israel as the militant group debates whether to surrender its arms. In a letter to staff, Gaza's Hamas-run government urged its more than 40,000 civil servants and security personnel to cooperate with the NCAG, but assured them it was working to incorporate them into the new government. Islamist group Hamas retains control of just under half of Gaza following an October ceasefire deal brokered by the United States, and the agreement ties further Israeli troop withdrawals to Hamas giving up its weapons. The 20-point peace plan to end the war, now in its second phase, calls for the governments of Gaza to be handed to the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, a Palestinian technocratic body with US oversight that is meant to exclude Hamas. Major General Sawatch joins us once again. There were talks, of course, when this deal was being signed, that Hamas leaders would get amnesty. However, that wasn't inked in the deal that was signed. Disarmament, however, for phase 2 was, with Hamas mulling over if they are going to partake in that step. Of course, that's a huge goal for Israel for that to happen. But this update here, is Hamas seeking to enter a new administration really a step towards moderation or a tactical move to retain power in the enclave?
You know, the point is, as far as this peace plan is concerned, now the first phase has been implemented where the ceasefire has taken place and the hostages have been exchanged. And wherever the hostages have died, the last rites has been also done, as well as their bodies have been sent back. Now the question comes in phase 2 and phase 3. What is the phase 2? One is that now the administration has to be handed over to the National Committee of Administration Governance. Now this is where the administration will be taken care of it. But what is basically Hamas is saying that it's about 40,000 policemen as well as the service personnel which were looking after the administration, they must be retained. Now that will not be liked by Israel. Israel is not going to accept it. So therefore the point which is come is that the administration which will be done by the Palestinian Technocratic Committee, and which will be starting from de novo. It will not have any resemblance of anyone from Hamas, whether these are the police personnel or from the administration side, because Israel is not going to agree on that. The second very important sticking point is disarmament of Hamas. You know, when we are talking about it now as to how disarming of Hamas will be done, that is a very, very important question. Because if Hamas is not disarmed, then it will be very difficult to administer the Gaza. And who will disarm it? You know, there was a talk that international force will be there, stabilizing force, and they will be utilized for disarming. But that was also overruled because most of the Muslim countries were part of international stabilizing force, including Pakistan, and they were refusing that they will not able to disarm Hamas. So the question comes, the sticking point is where is basically as to how will you disarm Hamas, and if Hamas is not disarmed, then if you think the peace has come back in Gaza, it may not be correct statement. So that's very important. Second thing is the Hamas still control 50% of Gaza, and they want this new administration which is coming to administer. They must have their own people, especially the police personnel and their administration, which is not going to be accepted by Israel. So this is what it is happening. Let's see how things unfold.
Major General Sawatch, thank you very much for taking the time and joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you here on the broadcast. We now turn over to Europe, and Spain's left-wing government will approve a decree to legalise 500,000 undocumented migrants, granting them the right to work in any sector and region of the country. Migration Minister Elma Sayes highlighted the positive economic and social impact of the move. The decision marks a break from stricter migration policies seen in other European countries and is part of Spain's broader effort to integrate migrants into the workforce. Separately, over the English Channel, anti-immigrant protests are taking place in Sutton in Ashfield after a 28-year-old asylum seeker, Shiraz Malik, was convicted of raping an 18-year-old in Sutton in Ashfield, Nottinghamshire, in the UK. Malik, previously shielded under reporting restrictions, now can be named as an asylum seeker. The trial was moved to Birmingham to ensure impartiality. His case was highlighted by the Reform UK MP Lee Anderson, further claiming he had been asked not to publicise the case by police for fear of jeopardising the prosecution. Andrew Latham joins us now. He is an international affairs expert. He joins us live from Minneapolis. We, of course, have seen immigration as being a huge point of debate throughout Europe, whether that be Germany, France, or the United Kingdom. It has seen the rise of these parties like Reform in the UK, like National Rally in France, and like the AfD in Germany. What do you make of Spain's stance here? Pedro Sanchez's government going quite the other way.
Well, it's not a complete about-face. I think it's a recognition of realities. Spain has a chronic labor shortage in certain sectors, agriculture and care industry and things like that. And migrant workers help fill the gaps. And there's this move is about regularizing 500,000 migrants who are already in Spain. It's not about opening the doors to more, at least not directly and explicitly, about opening the doors to more migration. It's about recognizing that these people are already here. They're already contributing to the Spanish economy. If they are regularized, they'll be contributing to the Spanish tax base more directly. It's being framed as a win-win in terms of recognizing existing realities and not opening the door to some new reality in which Spain is saying, send me your poor and your homeless, etc., quoting the Statue of Liberty in the US there. That's not the case. So from Madrid's perspective, it's perfectly rational, perhaps long overdue, recognition of reality, not an attempt to change the migration reality.
Moving on to that situation in the United Kingdom, how much do high-profile cases by asylum seekers shape the public opinion in places like the UK, of course, like places like France, like Germany, where we have seen attacks previously by asylum seekers? Of course, in the broader context, how the media conducts itself, Andrew.
Yes, well, it needs to be said, first of all, that the rates of violent crime by asylum seekers is lower than in the existing population. That's not really the point, though. The point is that it reflects, when these stories pop in the media, and the reaction to it reflects the anxiety of many Brits that something is happening which is out of control, migration, which is changing the country in ways that many people in the UK don't appreciate, welcome, or even like. So it's a flashpoint, as it were. It concentrates all of these ambient anxieties, things that are often just below or just above the surface in terms of the media and whatnot. And it doesn't take very much to bring all of that to the surface, sometimes violently, sometimes very loudly. But these kinds of trials, when it's revealed that there's an asylum seeker or even a migrant more broadly involved, tends to kick off this kind of reaction.
Andrew, do stay with us as we move on over to the United States for our next story. And protesters in Minneapolis are expressing relief as some federal agents conducting immigration enforcement began leaving the city starting on Tuesday. Residents say their neighborhoods have faced months of disruption and tension, and any reduction in the number and intensity of federal operations is seen as a significant relief to the community. Let's listen in to what a few protesters had to say.
The guy's an absolute clown, and he's been out here cosplaying like some Nazi SS member, brutalizing our communities and using NATO-banned tear gas and stuff on our innocent families. He can leave. And if he already has, I'm sorry that I couldn't say it to him.
So we're here protesting against Amy, who is a senator in Minnesota. She's been reposting a lot of the incidents that's been happening in Minnesota. However, she hasn't been taking action to do so. She's just sitting up in her office at the moment, just listening to us chant and cheer. It is a huge injustice to our community, especially if we have, the mayors, all these other political figures stepping in, and she's just not doing her part of the work. So we're all outside here, going against that, and going against injustice for all the other states.
Mom came from Egypt to America for a better life, raised me as a single mother here, and I'm here because she's as American as anybody, and what my sign says, immigrants make America.
Andrew Latham joins us from Minneapolis itself to discuss this in further detail. Andrew, of course, this comes after the fatal shooting by ICE officers of 2 US citizens, Renee Nicole Good and Alex Pretty. I guess the one thing to ask you is, what is the feeling? Is there a huge sigh of relief across Minneapolis right now?
There is a sigh of relief, and there's also, though, let's wait and see exactly what happens. Signals coming from the White House don't often translate to changes on the ground. And so let's see if the high-risk policing tactics of ICE morph into something else, if there's more cooperation between the federal government agents and state officials and local police. So it's a yes, a sigh of relief, but let's wait and see. Actions always speak louder than words, and so far we only have words.
And of course, Andrew, this comes as Donald Trump has announced that he is sending his border czar, Tom Homan, to Minneapolis. What are the feelings towards this? He's set to meet Jacob Frey, the mayor, in the coming days, a mayor who has used very aggravated language towards the operations that have been going on in Minneapolis over the last few weeks. What is expected out of that meeting?
Well, in terms of of Homan versus Kristi Noem, who's the Secretary of Homeland Security, clearly there were two visions in tension within the White House, one of which was Kristi Noem's let's do big sweeps in Democratic-leaning or liberal-leaning cities, and let's be rather indiscriminate, and we'll send a very strong message, versus Homan's strategy, which is let's ramp up enforcement of immigration, but let's do it in a less risky way. Let's do it in collaboration with state and local officials. And so Homan's vision has won as a result of the most recent death at the hands of ICE agents. And so I think we're likely to actually see on the ground a shift in tactics. It's not that the policy will go away, but it won't involve so many large sweeps of streets and neighborhoods as it was under the Kristi Noem strategy. So that's huge. And Bovino, who is the head of ICE in the region, is being sent away as well. So that's a strong signal. It looks like, as was the case with Greenland, that President Trump ramped up the pressure, realized it was having a counterproductive effect on him politically and geopolitically in the Greenland case, and then dialed back his approach. Maybe that's his modus operandi. I think it is his modus operandi, and now we see it working on the streets of Minneapolis.
Would you even call this a possible rare concession by President Donald Trump? He, of course, doubled down after the killing of Renee Good, but Pretty seems to be one step too far when it comes to the way ICE is conducting himself in Minnesota right now.
Yeah, again, it's his modus operandi, his way of doing business. He often ramps things up, and he writes about this in his book on the art of the deal. You ramp up your demands, you ramp up your efforts, and then when it seems that you're not likely to get exactly what you want, you backpedal a little bit, you get some of what you want, which he seems to be getting here. If Mayor Frey and Governor Walz in Minnesota are now willing to play ball with Trump on this immigration enforcement file, then that's a win. And continuing with the high-profile Noem approach to immigration enforcement was clearly a loss, not only with undecided voters in the run-up to the midterm elections, but also within his own base, especially because the Pretty protester was carrying a gun. He had a concealed carry permit. He was allowed to carry the gun. Some of the officials in the White House criticized him for that, and of course the Second Amendment, the gun lobby in the U.S. really reacted badly against that, and that gun lobby is part of Trump's base. So you can see how this was playing really poorly, not only amongst Democrats and progressives and undecideds, but even within the Republican base it was playing badly with some people. It was becoming a lose-lose strategy for Trump. And so he's moved from plan A, I think, to plan B, which is more sustainable, less fraught with all kinds of political possibilities, negative political possibilities. One could, if one were being charitable, say that this is a rational response to an objective set of circumstances which were becoming increasingly unfavorable to the Trump administration. What else could he do?
And those investigations which the federal government says it is going through right now, when it comes to those killings that occurred on Minneapolis soil. We, of course, saw Donald Trump's Truth Social post saying that he had a conversation with Governor Walz and said their thoughts were aligned, even that they could work together on immigration. However, when it comes to the investigations, do you expect there could be some possible deal made in getting state authorities to be involved in those investigations, something which the Trump administration had previously barred from happening?
Yes, I do. I'm hopeful in that respect. Legally, the federal government does not have to include or involve local and state officials in investigations of that sort. But traditionally, historically, that has been the norm. And so there was a kind of violation, not of the law in this case, constitutional law, but of the norm of cooperation with local and state officials. And so if this is a moment of reconciliation, of dialing back the tension, of actually finding practical ways to address what is a challenge politically, then it's likely that as part of the deal, Trump will say, okay, we will do what the federal government usually does, which is cooperate with local and state police officials and law enforcement officials. So the way things seem to be unfolding, that would be the next logical step. Whether this administration takes the next logical step remains to be seen, but I remain hopeful.
Andrew Latham, as always, it's a great pleasure to speak to you. Thank you very much for taking the time and joining us here on the channel. We now move and finish this hour with some updates from the tech world. And Google is defending its Android platform amid new EU scrutiny, saying the system is open by design and that the company already licenses search data to competitors under the Digital Markets Act. The company's senior competition counsel warned that additional rules, often driven by complaints from competitors rather than consumer interests, could put user privacy, security and innovation at risk. The European Union's first set of proceedings focuses on Google's obligation under the DMA to ensure third-party developers have free and effective access to Android hardware and software features controlled by the company. Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.